How you doing?
Great, how you doing?
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, September 10th, 2018. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika. Councilmember Piana.
Here.
And Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. Greg is here and in the building, so we won't mark him absent, okay? Thank you. Next item of business would be the approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Piana. Any discussion on the agenda this evening? All right, hearing none. Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Here.
Councilmember Piana.
It's a yes.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That was a yes for Councilman Polika.
Yes, here.
Yes.
Aye,
I know you missed the here parts.
Next item of business would be presentations, and we have one very exciting presentation this evening, and that would be a promotion in our fire department. And Chief Sullivan, do you want to introduce that item for us?
Mr. Mayor, Council, tonight I'm very proud to announce that John Schwall, a 18-plus year member veteran of the fire department, who has been assigned to, for the last 12 years, of taking care of our EMS supply and our medical equipment, make sure it's FDA qualified and state qualified, medical control qualified. And I recently put him in charge of the safety committee, which we reconstituted, which was in the contract, but we hadn't had one in 40 years. So he's done a great job at everything, and he was number one on our list. So here he is, John Schwall. John, could you come up?
Yes.
Ceremoniously, to give him his sergeant badge, his wife Patty is here, and she'll come up to pin his badge on him.
Oh, wonderful. Now, John, you know we're getting new equipment in the vehicles. You're going to leave just when we get the new toys. Huh?
Right when he's getting off.
Yeah?
Come on up, Patty. It's unlatched there. You can remove that one and put the new one in place. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Who is now out of uniform because he has no sergeant stripes on.
Well, Sergeant, congratulations, and look forward to another 18 years?
Won't be quite that.
Okay.
Kick me out before that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. All right. Our next item of business would be call to audience, and this would be your opportunity, if you're here from the public and you would like to address council on any issue that's not on the agenda, because you can address that issue when we get to that portion of the agenda. But if you'd like to come up and address council on any issue, just come on up to the podium, give us your name, address, and 3 minutes is yours. All right. None this evening, all right. Very good, then we'll move on to the next item of business, and that would be a public hearing, and the public hearing is going to be on the Geary Park Alley vacation, and Lorena, you're going to introduce that item, is that you? Yeah.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
As you all aware, we received a 2017 MDNR Trust Fund grant to make improvements at Geary Park. As part of the conditions of that grant, any work done under that funding must be owned by the city. When we submitted our boundary maps and legal descriptions, it was identified that certain alleys within the park weren't vacated or we couldn't find proper records of that. And so we are requesting to the city council to approve the vacation and a resolution for the alleys that are listed in front of you for Geary Park.
Very good. All right.
If I could just add to that,
Yeah.
Mayor, council previously considered this issue back on August 13th and scheduled the public hearing for this evening, which
Right.
was 4 weeks ago, so that's consistent with the city charter, and it's my understanding has been published twice, also consistent with the charter provisions.
Great. Okay, so with that introduction, I will open it up to the public, and I will ask if there's anyone here from the public that would like to address council on this public hearing on the alley vacation this evening. I don't see anyone, so we will close the public hearing portion, and now I will open it up to council for questions, comments, or motions that you may have.
I don't have questions, may I make a motion?
That would be in order.
Sure, I'd move that Ferndale City Council, after notice and holding a public hearing on September 10th, 2018, 7 p.m., resolves and approves, adopts the submitted resolution to vacate alleys at Geary Park as described in the packet.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Leaks May. Now, any further discussion, questions, or comments?
Your Honor, at that meeting in August, I had expressed concern that there were properties on that, within the park that may not have moved their fences. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of what property going forward, what property will be ours, and what property is going to be lost with these individuals moving their fences into the existing park.
If I could, through the chair, the alley is just depicted, there is a picture of the alley that's to be vacated that's in, it's right behind the resolution in council's packet, the solid marked line depicts the alley that is being vacated.
Well, it's a drawing, but it's not a picture, and so I really can't tell if, along those lines that are on the drawing, whether or not there's a fence there or not.
Do we, I thought, we may have addressed this last time, but is the fence currently where it needs to be, or are there going to be people that are going to lose a portion of their yard, I guess? Is that your concern? Do we know that?
No, let's find out.
Yeah, we'll follow up with the
To make
engineer.
it contingent, well,
Yeah, we can make,
Well,
I mean,
you know,
at
if
the very
it's in
least,
the alley, it's not supposed to be in the alley anyway.
yes.
The fence would normally not have encroached on on an alley, even if it wasn't being utilized. It would still be the city's alley and
Yeah.
adverse possession, as you know, doesn't apply to municipal property as a general matter.
I understand, but we have experienced actions in the distant past that have never properly been documented, that may have taken place and people have taken action, and then we find ourselves in these situations where it's like, well, how did that happen? So I just want to make sure that we're aware that, all of these properties are going to be moving their fences back if they haven't already done so.
Have these
If I could, through
homeowners
the
been
chair.
notified, by the way, or just through the normal public?
Well, I don't know, maybe, perhaps they have. They
Advertising.
certainly, the
Through
public
the
notice
public
went out.
hearing.
Through the public, yeah.
The drawing and survey that's attached to council's material was prepared by Giffords. They may have, the actual surveyor that went out may have some insight as it relates to where that is, and maybe we can check with Mr. Ringler as it relates there.
Other comments or questions? All right, well, we have a motion and a support. If there's no further comments or questions, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin?
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilwoman Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Thanks, Lorena.
Thank you.
That concludes our public hearings this evening. Next item of business would be the consent agenda. Consent agenda are items that council considers routine and enacts in one motion unless a member of council removes one of those items. So let me read those now. Item A is the approval of the regular meeting minutes of August 27, 2018. Item B is the approval to reschedule the November 12th city council meeting to November 13th due to Veterans Day office closure. Item C is the approval to modify Rule 4, Section 4 of the Civil Service Rules as approved by the Civil Service Board on August 16, 2018, and submitted by the HR Director. Item D is the approval of the backfilling of 6 firefighter positions, also submitted by the HR Director. Approval of the backfilling of 3 DPW Grade 1 laborers, also HR Director. Approval of the employment agreement for Vincent Palazzolo. Approval of the proposed video surveillance agreement between the Ferndale Public Schools, and the Ferndale Police Department. Item H is the approval to purchase 10 Cradle Point FG1BR 1150 LPE AT modems and antennas in the amount of $6,500 from the account noted. Item I is the approval of the equipment and maintenance cost for the build-out of the Chevrolet Tahoe PPVs for a total of $27,868 from the Drug Forfeiture Fund. Item J is the approval of the purchase of 10 X29P tasers and to sign the agreement for a 5-year purchase plan. Total amount, $14,840 over a 5-year period, and that's also from the drug forfeiture account. Item K is the approval of a resolution accepting the new the Oakland County Hazard Mitigation Plan as submitted by our fire chief. Item L is the approval of the expenditure of $2,581.20 to Ajax Material Corporation for the UPM cold mix, and that the expense be charged 50/50 to the Major Streets Surface Maintenance Streets Repair and Maintenance Fund and the Local Streets Surface Maintenance Streets Repair and Maintenance Fund. Item M is the approval of the repairs to booster pump number 4 at a cost of $4,195. That expense to be charged to the Water and Sewer Fund. Item N is the approval of the amendment to Chapter 5, Animals and Fowl, Section 5-8, as submitted by our city attorney. Item O is the approval of an expenditure not to exceed $20,000 for the implementation of the business development campaign, as submitted by the CED Director. And finally, the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the City Manager's Office and subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. What is Council's plan?
Your Honor, through the chair. I would like to just draw the attention to item N, which is the really sexy named approval of the Animals and Fowl, Section 5-8. What this really is, just to clarify, a number of residents I know has approached a number of us, and this is essentially allowing the number of chickens that you can keep at your house up to 6. There hasn't been any complaints or problems with compliance on this, and since we first implemented allowing chickens in the city at my very first council meeting up here, chickens has become part of the family apparently, and they produce much less. And so this allows them to continue to get the production to support eggs for the family while maintaining an aged chicken population.
Through the chair. So in other words, they don't become chicken dinner?
Correct. Yeah. So anyway, but people are very passionate about this, and I think we've got great experience and track record and expertise in the city, candidly, on this, that I think 6 is perfectly acceptable in my mind. So I'd encourage your support.
Through the chair?
Yes.
As the original sponsor of the chicken ordinance, very proud of the chickens, I am in support of 6 chickens.
All right. Other comment, well, not comment on the consent agenda, because either something that you would like pulled or a motion to approve, and then we can discuss.
Through the chair, I approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved by Pollock, is there support?
I'll support it.
All right, moved by Pollock and supported by Martin. Now, further discussion on the consent agenda. Yes, April.
I would like to acknowledge, since we're talking about chickens,
Yes.
that what's also important to note is that it's been official that Vinnie Palazzolo is now going to be our chief of police for the city of Ferndale. I felt like I needed to talk about that.
Sure, the segue quite
I'm
worked,
still making the
but
connection, that's awesome.
I'm like, we're gonna talk about chickens. So I don't wanna wait till call to action because sometimes people turn off the TV by then. But I do wanna acknowledge how excited we are to have Chief Palazzolo as a permanent addition to our leadership team and how excited we are to have him start his role as the chief of police. For those that are interested, we are doing a formal meet and greet with Chief Palazzolo on Tuesday, September 18th from 6 to 7 here at City Hall. There will also be an official ceremony. And again, congratulations, Chief. We are so happy to have you permanently on our team. You were a team member prior to that, but we're really excited to have you as our chief, and we look very much forward to having the community come and celebrate that achievement with you next Tuesday.
not to put you on the spot, but anything you want, yeah, right? Anything you want to add to that, Chief? All right, not to put you on the spot. Excellent. Thank you.
Chief and chickens.
Nice.
Chickens and chiefs.
I thought
Chicken and chips.
could not talk about Chief.
Coming to Ferndale
I'm just
soon.
saying.
All right, any other further comments or questions, concerns on the consent agenda? If not, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yep.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Moving on now to the regular agenda. Item A is the consideration of the fire hydrant reconditioning project. And I'm going to guess that Chief Sullivan is introducing that item. Although, Joe, I'm sure you could do a fine job of it as well.
Well, Your Honor, Council, this is a cooperative effort between the DPW and the fire. I'm stayed involved because when people complain about hydrants, they're not part of the water system. They have the word fire in front of them. So it's obviously, we receive the complaints when they're looking shabby in that. Looking throughout the city, we have several that are in pretty rough shape. Pleasant Ridge did this. If you ever drive through and see, this process is a sand blasting or water pressure blasting system. The agent used is a recycled glass product, so it's good for the environment. There's nothing going out that is damaging. They put tarps over them. You got pictures of a before hydrant, a during the process, blasting it to the metal, and then a primed and painted hydrant. The primer and paint are both manufactured specifically for us. It's a brighter red. They add extra something to make it harder and shinier. And there's more zinc added to the primer so that it's more rust preventative. The DPW, Dan Harper, is here if you have any questions, as he runs the water department. But neither department could maintain or take these things down to where they should be, clean them and paint them. But once this is done overall citywide, we'd be able to keep the maintenance up at DPW's end of the stick. And we can also go out and paint hydrants when we check them if there's damage. And also we grease the caps so that they come off easy when we need to get them hooked up for a fire. So you have your packet. If there's any questions, Dan's here as well as myself. I'm more than happy to answer.
Just a question of clarification, and probably a dumb one, but you mentioned that we're painting them red again. A lot of communities do yellow. What's the difference, and does it matter?
It's pretty much aesthetics, although yellow may show up a little better at night, but if they're painted properly, we can spot them. We actually know where they are before we leave due to GPS mapping, so. And that's another thing that'll be added with the layering using the GIS system, and eventually that'll integrate right in so we can pick up on MDTs or mobile data terminals, and we'll know where the hydrants lie before we get there. Dan also brought up a really good idea. We're going to add at the water department a project to coat where the very top of it bolts to the barrel, a stick-on reflective coloring, and that coloring will tell the fire department and the water department how much gallons per minute, how much water comes out of those specific hydrants by the color. So then the color chart will guide us to where we need to get more water. We can tell by the reflective ring around them.
That's a great idea, yeah. And I'm sorry, did you say Pleasant Ridge has done this?
Yeah, they did it a couple years ago, and their hydrants are all looking, in fact, you ever seen the old hydrants? They got two small connectors and one big one. We mostly have the two 4-inch bungs. The two 2.5 bung ones are probably 1940s, 1930s, and they look like they were just installed by the water department in Pleasant Ridge because the job does that well of cleaning all the paint off and getting to bare metal.
But I guess my question to that was, this is billed through the water department, not the fire department. That's why we don't do it for our fire customers, like Pleasant Ridge and Royal Oak Township. We're not doing this for the township.
Yeah, that's
because
correct.
their water's-
It falls on them. Now, years ago, when we had a little more manpower, we used to go out and do minor painting and maintenance of hydrants. But with current manpower, that's not within the future of doing this. And then we did have a project where we were using people that had given public service at the courts.
Right.
And they put more paint on everything in the city except the hydrants. So that program, you pretty much have to stay there and monitor them. And if a person's doing that, then it really might as well just paint them ourselves. So we just don't have the staff to maintain that kind of program.
But we will, actually, though, that's a good point. Let's reach out to Royal Oak Township and see the status on theirs as well, just to make sure that they're.
They might want to
replacing
participate.
Yeah, maybe they might want to work with us on that.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you. Okay,
Through the chair?
yes.
This deals with maintenance, I guess. I've noticed other communities, right before winter, they'll install like a tall antenna on each of the hydrants, so that in the wintertime, as plows go through and bury them, you at least have an idea of where they're located. I know you mentioned GPS, but have we thought about doing anything like that so that it reminds the neighbors to keep those cleared?
We usually put out through CARA, through comms, asking people if there's a hydrant in front of your house to maintain it. If you can't, to call us and either DPW or fire will dig it out. But we usually send a crew out or a guy out in a pickup truck to check when there's a lot of snow, if there's any that may be buried. I find that a lot of people are taking care of it without even being asked, but we definitely check that.
So we don't have a motion yet, actually.
I move that to approve the hydrant reconditioning project by vendor American Flow Blasting for the amount listed to be paid from the water capital account from the account listed. American Flow Blasting will be paid 15% down at the amount listed to start the project immediately as submitted by Chief Sullivan.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by
Bless you.
May, supported by Piana. Now, any additional comments, questions on that item? You know what I was trying to find in here? Maybe I just didn't see it. How many fire hydrants do we have?
605.
6?
No kidding.
It's a lottery number.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, you're right. It did say that in there. All right. Further questions or comments?
Oh, right here.
If not, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That is adopted. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, next item of business, consideration of an exclusive negotiating rights agreement for 221 West Troy. Where would that be?
Yeah,
Joe?
well, if you see my face, you can probably guess where that might be.
Need
I
your
am here-
GPS to find that?
It will be tracked in GIS. I'm here, as always, I'll provide a brief backdrop of the project for the viewing public. City Council approved of the project known as the DOT, which is situated at the address 221 West Troy Street. Some of you might not know it's assigned an address already,
Didn't
but
know
it
that,
is.
actually.
221 West Troy Street, and City Council and the Planning Commission approved of a PUD, a planned unit development vision for this project site that consists of public pieces and private pieces. The public pieces, just as a refresh for everybody, is about 400 parking spaces, a streetscape refresh on West Troy, as well as some alley improvements and sustainability improvements on the rear part of the parcel that would be between the residential and the development. There's also private components, including up to 39,000 square feet of office, up to 20,000 square feet of residential, known as Parcel B on the site plan, and between 14,000 and 18,000 square feet of street-level commercial space that would border the West Troy Street. So this vision, the site plan, this PUD, was adopted in October. And once this was adopted, the city cast out a request for proposal for the development community. And we were seeking some feedback and some interest from the market in terms of developing the office and residential and retail. And so we went through a lengthy vetting process throughout the winter and throughout the spring. And we presented on that process an update to council in the spring. But essentially, the initial feedback we got was there's a tremendous amount of interest, but the predominant interest was in developing residential. And the city had strong objectives in terms of bringing in office towards the downtown to complement the parking. I'm handsy. So we made an adjustment to the design based on some of the initial feedback. We submitted a second RFP to the development community, and we went through the process again. We vetted developers, and over the past few months, we've been working towards exclusivity agreement with one of the respondents. And we're here tonight to present a recommendation that City Council consider that the city and Versa Wanda LLC engage in exclusivity agreements for a period of 150 days to work towards the goal of developing a development agreement to work towards developing that office, residential, and retail space. And as I mentioned in my summary, Versa was selected because of their specific interest in reflecting the city's goals in terms of the PUD and their specific experience in bringing in office talent into their developments. So with that, we have two representatives tonight that I did want to introduce to the public and to City Council. And two representatives of Versa Wanda LLC are Greg Ernie, who is principal at Versacos, I'm not sure, Versa. And we have Jeff Denha, who is principal at 965 Wanda, who is also a local entrepreneur. 965 Wanda is one of our gem properties in our industrial district. Yeah. And so with that, we would open the floor to questions with regard to the agreement, if there are any. If not, that's okay.
Yeah. Do either of you gentlemen want to, I mean, if you want to address council, or it's not required, of course, but if you'd like to make any statements, this would be appropriate.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this moment. Just want to tell you a little bit about us. 965 Wanda is, like Joe said, one of the gems in the industrial district. It could not have been possible without the cooperation of the city, who worked very well with us. So working so well on this project, our family decided, you know what, we want to do more business in the city of Ferndale. So here now in the city of Ferndale, we own 3 properties and hope to own a 4th. But in order to do this project right, we decided that before we submit our RFP, we'd go out and team up with a talented development group. So we teamed up with Versa, who you'll meet, Greg, in a minute here. They've got some great properties around town in Royal Oak and Grosse Pointe, and this is exactly what they do, mixed-use developments. I highly encourage you to look at some of the developments they've done. So with that, we came up with an agreement to do a deal together, and we submitted our RFP, and we do appreciate the opportunity and the consideration to do this deal. With that, I would like to turn it over to Greg Ernie from Versa. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Greg Ernie. As Jeff said, we started looking at this project a few months ago as an expansion of both his real estate holdings as well as my company's holdings. I'm a principal in a small company based in Royal Oak, Michigan, and our focus is mainly on repositioning and redevelopment, including new development of properties, primarily in smaller urban communities. Our portfolio is probably 95% in the state of Michigan, with most of that being in southeastern Michigan. And currently, we have 3 projects in Royal Oak that we're going, that are underway, almost completing them, and we're looking for new projects right now. So this was a good opportunity to team up with Jeff. We're 50-50 partners on the deal, so it's an even split. We both bring something to the table, and we're looking forward to continuing on with this. And I think the negotiating agreement is actually a really good structure of performance milestones and metrics, as well as adequate time in order to get everything done that we need to get done in order to proceed. So thank you for your consideration.
Greg, can I just ask you, just sort of at a high level, how do you see this project? How do you see it fitting in? Why do you think it can be successful? And what will it take to be successful?
Well, first of all, when we looked at the RFP, I commend the city for going forward and developing a vision that was really well thought out. I mean, you did hire a good design firm, you put in enough parking spaces, you didn't overextend yourself on the commitment for office space, and you included other elements like commercial on the first floor and residential. So, and I'm gonna try to remember all your questions here instead of just talking, so you might
Just
have
sort
to
of
remind me.
High level, but what will it take to make this a successful project in your mind?
Well, right now, the key element is gonna be containing cost and being able to provide a rental rate that will attract tenants to this market. Ferndale does not have an extensive supply of office space, and this is primarily, what we're gonna be doing is primarily office. There's first floor commercial, which we all know can lease, and there's residential, which we all know is in demand. I believe that office is in demand, but right now, Ferndale is not a known office commodity, if you will. And that's what I believe this project seeks to change for the city. And I think with the right economic incentives, the right structure physically, including the fact that office needs parking and parking will be there, good visibility, modern space with amenities. Ground up office is going to do well here, but to make it succeed, we're gonna be focusing on economics and being able to attract catalyst tenants that fit in with the vision of Ferndale long-term.
Other questions or comments of council?
Your Honor, I'd like to move that we approve the exclusive negotiating rights agreement between the City of Ferndale and Versa Wanda LLC.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Now, comments, questions?
Through the chair.
Yes.
I just want to say I really appreciate you coming forward and working with the city. I do want to remind residents that we did RFP this twice out to the community, and Versa has been really collaborative on what is a complex redevelopment project. And I'm really excited to see what we can come up with in the next, was it 120 days?
150.
150 days, to see if we can get to a mutually beneficial agreement on cost.
Indeed. Other comments or questions?
And through the chair, I just want to reiterate that this is a signal to go into a dating partnership. It does not mean marriage. I always like to use those types of analogies, because we can determine at the end of the 120 days that perhaps marriage isn't the best, but that's what the negotiation period is for.
Indeed. All right. We've had quite a bit of conversation around these issues, in case people are wondering, gee, an important agreement to go into without a lot of conversation.
Talked about it a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
So if there are no further comments or questions, council? Dan, I assume you have seen the agreement?
I have, I did participate along with Council from Miller Canfield in negotiating with the proposed developer, and I think that the agreement before you does reflect some of the concerns previously noted and raised by council. in this amended version.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Then Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Gentlemen, looking forward to dating. Need a better analogy.
I know, but
I'm gonna just,
it works.
But it works.
I'm just gonna say, Joe takes a lot of heat from us on this stuff, but nice job.
Yeah.
You really
The
are
team
doing a
did
great job navigating this, and I
Another
really appreciate you.
milestone.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get that consultant stuff out of your head. You got a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do, Joe. All right. Excellent. So item C is the consideration of a fee schedule as submitted by our city manager.
Joe, would you mind queuing that up for me? And I need the clicker.
All right. Right? Hot diggity. Oh, that's this.
Thank you. This is the first time we did a pretty significant overhaul in our fee schedule, meaning more internally, making sure that we understood the dynamics, understood what we were, some of the things that haven't been adjusted in quite some time. I found out through this process that CED hasn't even really truly looked at their fees for over 10 years. So we took some opportunities internally to clean up some things that were confusing, which has actually brought more confusion probably to city council. So what you have, yeah. So what you have before you is some recommendations that the city staff is bringing before you. We have a significant number of line items in this fee schedule. I did not go over every single one of them, and I only, this report is more high level. So if I don't touch something on in here that council has questions on, our team is here to provide answers to some of those questions that you may have. One of the things that we're going to be looking at as we move in the future is every other year, looking at the fee schedule in this kind of manner and having a more robust conversation so that we can make sure that we're meeting the needs that we have as it relates to fees and making sure that council understands that as well. So I think it's important to note that sometimes we forget why and how it is that a city can have fees. User fees are really meant to provide services to the community that focus on an individual use. Most often you'll see that in the regulatory area and in the voluntary. So a lot of times, most of the fees that you see come from building permits, licenses, things of that nature that are more very specific and unique to an individual that may not be covered through the general fund. And then they have voluntary, which is our recreation classes, parking permits, things of that nature that may not necessarily be regulatory, but provide a benefit to an individual. So again, not everybody wants to participate in yoga, so then they can choose to participate in that whether they want to or not. So in any instance, all fees are really meant to cover those very specific costs that are unique to the individual and not to produce a profit. So we don't bring in fees to offset general costs of doing business. It's very much for those specific areas. And so when we talk about doing fees, really what the conversation is today and in general when we do fees is cost recovery. In some instances, you might find that, it's someday, God willing, we may never have to charge for any recreation class. But right now, that's just where we are right now. Our recreation only brings in about 50% of the money that they, of all of the classes and programming that they do. So really, it comes down to fees as cost recovery and what we need to make those special programs work.
But the costs can include employee costs?
Yes, for doing that very specific business, because if they're not doing that, they might be doing something else.
Yep.
So, so it really comes down to what is the focus areas that we have in the priority areas, and when we start getting into some really unique programming, things of that nature, and that's when you start to look more at fees. The same with regulatory, when you have more very specific building permits, licenses, things of that nature. It takes extra time and resources to provide those services. So what I broke this down to today are some three major areas that I'm focusing on, which is a credit card fee conversation, some significant changes in the CD area, and just wanted to touch on recreation because they had some different changes as well. And again, in this particular presentation, I'm not going line by line. But, so if I don't talk about something in here, please bring that forward.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to make sure I'm clear on how the technology is. If it's not showing down here, can the folks on TV see your slide deck? So they can see it?
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay, because usually it's up here, you're right.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because it,
So I thought I'd do the hard one first, which is not really hard, but more complicated conversation, which is credit card fees. So we're gonna go right into the icky stuff and end with the easy stuff, if you will. So in general, though, for, an important note is that revenue-wise, I don't know if anybody knows this, but 26%, almost 27% of our revenue comes from fees. So it's not a minor amount, if you will. So in general, when we have these conversations, again, there's a significant number of things that we do in the city that are fee-based. Credit cards, okay. So we've had multiple conversations, council's not, this is not the first that they heard of our conversation of wanting to start addressing the credit card usage fees. They are beginning increasingly expensive and frankly, in my personal opinion, a little ridiculous in how much credit card fees charge you for a swipe. And it's only getting worse. And so one of the things that we've been talking about, we actually put in a fee schedule, I think in 2015 or 16, and a 3% charge that we never implemented because it's complicated. We didn't quite have the right software, and we were trying to figure out how to implement that. And so because of that long lag in time, I felt that it would be best for the city council to, our city council to, again, opine again on what we want to do with credit card fees. So in fiscal year 2018, we spent approximately $96,000 across the departments on credit card fees. This is, I want to be clear, this is not counting any of the kiosk transactions and parking. It's a very separate conversation. So we had about 26,000 transactions, if you will, $28,000 if you want to count the e-checks that we do online and or over the phone. So there's a significant number of transactions that happen per day as it relate, or per year as it relates to credit cards. It's also important to note we are trending, as are most of our other communities. Cheryl did a couple checkpoints. Everybody's averaging between 18 and 20% increase this next year in credit cards. So it's again, and you've even seen that with our parking, the trend continues to go up in the convenience factor. There's a lot of ways to address credit card fees, and when you look at other communities, they're all doing it in different ways or hybrid approaches or things of that nature. So the three things that we can really do to address these processing fees with a credit card is we can continue to provide the credit card transaction and call it the cost of doing business. We can provide flat percentages of the cost of goods and provide a preset convenience fee. So I think many of you are very familiar with some of your own online purchases. Sometimes there's a flat fee, sometimes it's a percentage of whatever it is that you purchase. But we do have all of those options through our Points and Pay, which is the program that we use to process our credit cards to the city. We're actually recommending a little bit of a hybrid approach that I'll talk about next. This is our recommendation, and of course, we'll open that up for conversation with City Council too. Maybe. Hey, Joe, can you do me a favor and hit forward? Maybe I'll have to move down there. So one of the things that we're recommending on the tax side is an actual percentage, due to the fact that the taxes are the biggest bills that we have that anybody that they would charge for. The rest are typically permits and water bills, but the taxes is the one that has the highest impact as it relates to our credit card fees. We would recover by doing a 2% credit card recovery fee, about $25,000 for the general fund. So this is really interesting to know that a lot of people don't know that the credit card fee transactions are actually not set. It fluctuates per month depending on whatever the environment is, however they choose. I don't even know what the terminology is, but the market calls for. So you can have 1 month they might be 3%, 1 month they might be 1%. But we averaged over the course of last year, I think like 1.98%. So about 2%. So if we were to take a look at doing cost recovery, we would be looking at about 2%. We would look at a 2% standard fee for taxes, which I believe is that what the county does as well, or do they do the convenience fee per?
They do the tiered,
Okay.
this much for this much.
So right now, if anybody pays on the county website, they already get charged a fee. Right now, we don't charge, but the county does like a tiered, like if it's a certain amount, it might be it might be $1 or $2, depending on it. As it goes higher, it goes high, the convenience fee gets higher. So we would be looking at a 2% recovery for taxes, and then all the other transactions, we were looking at a convenience fee of $2.50. Again, this allows for more predictability. Again, it makes it easier for the person who is making that transaction just to know that that is the cost. Our average water bills range from $200 to $400 that get charged, and our average permit at the counter is $175. So again, some higher and some lower. A cost recovery for these transactions would trend toward about $67,000. By doing both of these, out of the $96,000 in credit card fees, we would recover about $92,000. An alternative is you could do 2% across the board, or again, other alternatives we'll talk about in just a second, but a 2% across the board would be a cost recovery about $99,000. That was based on last year. So again, it depends on the average transaction. It could be, next year they could be at 2.5%, but we don't know that until that time. So we would, again, we would be recommending a 2% if the convenience fee wasn't amenable to city council. So again, other alternatives, we can have a lower percentage rate, we can have a lower convenience fee, and we can continue to provide that service for free. There is, again, no wrong answer on this. It's just really about what we want to do for cost recovery. I think it's important to note, before we go into discussion, that one could take a look at, that's a lot of transactions, and if people don't want to pay that convenience fee, we're going to have 26,000 transactions coming and storming the counter. That actually is not the case. Before we did that, what happens is our bills get sent to what's called a lockbox. So anybody who mails in their check, it would go to a different source. They would process those checks. So it wouldn't necessarily come at the counter. And Cheryl was talking again to some of her peers over in other communities, and even with them, they've been charging convenience fees. Their rate of residents using charge cards continues to rise. So I don't necessarily think there would be a change as it relates too much to the amount of people we would need if we were to do that. But those, again, are our options. So again, I'm going to circle back to staff's recommendation, and then we'll have a conversation here with City Council, is, again, the 2% fee on tax credit cards, and then $2.50 fee on all other transactions. Again, this is minus parking, and actually, a caveat is it's also not including recreation, because we use a company called ActiveNet that helps coordinate all of their signups for all of their sports, and they have a very different fee schedule. It's very complicated that we need to spend more time revisiting. So with that, I will open up the conversation to City Council about credit card fee recovery options.
Through the chair?
Thoughts, Heartburn?
Are there any costs or fees associated with just providing that luxury of using credit cards? For example, if no one ever used a credit card, would we still have some type of cost or fee that we have to pay? I don't know if it's equipment or, some type of service fee of providing that service?
Well, they've been changing the laws, and right now there are a lot of things that people have to do to ensure credit card numbers. So they have a PCI fee. Most places are charging for that. We just got a bill for credit card usage that we don't use anymore because it was one of the old parking stations, and we're still getting like their annual PCI fee to comply with those laws.
Okay.
So the companies are still charging even if we're not using. And if your credit card fees are cyclical, or they're, low for 2 months of the year, then there's usually a higher cost associated with maintaining. If you have a higher level of credit card service, then it sounds weird, but the rates go down a little bit.
Okay, so does this 96,000 figure include those costs and fees, or
Yes.
is this in addition? Okay.
No, I just grabbed them, that's the total cost.
Okay.
It's also important to note, I didn't mention this, that on our point and pay, we allow not only in any event on the phone and online and at the counter, if you want to use your checking account and your routing number, that is free, online and on the phone. There is no charge for us processing your check.
Which comes, which gets to a concern of mine, which is the people who use a credit card to pay their taxes. Because if they had it in their checking account, they could do that for free. So it's a dangerous habit to get into, I think, putting your taxes on your credit card, because you're getting a fee from the credit card company and from the city, right?
Except I get a lot of Amazon points doing that.
I was gonna say, a lot of people do it for points.
Yeah, they do it for points, or they get cash back, all that stuff, and they might just charge it on the credit card and then pay it that month. So it's no different to them, but we're the one incurring the fee, and then they get
Yeah.
1, 2, or 3% back on their purchases,
Not that I
or
would ever use
miles,
Amazon.
or
Frequent
Amazon
flyer
points,
miles.
or whatever.
Hey Cheryl, I would just stay over there for a while.
Yeah. Unless you need this stuff. All right, that's a good point. Although I still think there's probably a percentage of people that are putting it on their credit card because they don't have it in their
absolutely.
checking account, and they don't have access to the money, and they're using a very debt-heavy way to pay their taxes. And I do think, we've talked about this before, I know it doesn't, I guess it's probably not quantifiable, but there is some savings to the city of people using online services and not coming in here. I don't know what that percentage is, or what those savings are, but I think it's something. I don't know how much.
Sure.
And so, having said that, when I look at, 2% across the board would be just a little bit more than we annually spend. For me, I would be comfortable doing like a 1% across the board and recouping half of that, and making the assumption that the savings and increased productivity and time that people can spend on doing other things and all of those other things are probably worth about half of that as well. I don't know how to quantify that because I've asked for that, but I also understand that's not an easy number to quantify. But that just sort of strikes me as fair. Cheryl, were you going to respond to that, or no? It looks like you wanted to say something.
No, I'm just making notes, so that when we do come back, I'll know
All right.
what you said.
Again, there is no right or wrong answer,
Right.
so
Right.
What is the trends with other cities? What are they doing?
Most of the other local communities, especially in Oakland County, are using Oakland County. They have a G2G service where they provide a credit card service, and then they charge a fee for it. It's kind of a flat schedule. It's about 3%, but as soon as you jump past, like, $100 is $3. It's $3, and then $200 is $6. So they have a flat fee that they charge depending on how much you're charging.
So
And
they do
then-
full cost recovery.
Well, actually, what the county does is the county gets some of that money back, and then they give like a fee back to the cities. So some of the cities are actually making money on using credit cards.
it's kind
So
of,
like they'll charge $2.50, the county will keep $2.25, and they'll kick 25 cents back to the community.
Communities that use them.
Yes, the communities that use them.
Did I hear correctly, City Manager Lynch, that we've not used credit card fees we didn't have a fee before?
we haven't charged, no.
No, we don't charge.
And how
If
long
you-
has that been, forever?
We've been using credit card pretty extensively now for almost 5 years.
I want to say it was 2014 when we switched over to BSNA, I think is when they started taking credit cards. Because there are other communities that don't charge, but they don't take credit cards either.
So we started taking credit cards in 2014.
I believe that's when it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, that was the number one request that I got through my campaign, going door to door, is people wanted to pay with credit cards and online, and our website was a little clunky.
Yeah.
Back then, back in the day.
Through the chair. Honestly, I think a lot of people are surprised that they're not charged a fee using their credit card. I don't know of any place that doesn't charge some type of service fee for using the credit card. And I kind of think that it's unfair to the person down the street who pays with check or deposit out of their account and never uses the credit card to have to pay via their taxes for someone else to use their credit card as a convenience.
I don't disagree with that, by the way, which is why and I wish I could get it, figuring out how to quantify what the increase in productivity or the decrease in service at the counter is worth. So that's why I'm making this ballpark estimate that it's worth 50 grand, but, because I don't disagree with that. I don't think it should be subsidized.
I don't know that it goes hand in hand, because part of the charges for credit card are when people come to the counter and swipe their credit card as well. So it's not just, we're charging credit card fees for people to have the convenience to pay from their couch. They also come in and charge, because a lot of people don't carry cash or their checkbook, and I'm not even sure where my checkbook is right now, because I use my debit card all the time. So a lot of the people that do still come in actually swipe their card up at the counter.
Cheryl, I have a question, I'm sorry are they allowed to use a debit card, and is that a different transaction, and is that lower fee, or is that
I
the
think
same?
they can still use it. I think there are different fee structures based on the card that you use. I've seen some credit card statements from companies showing our charges that are literally 4 pages long. So like, there's 20 lines of Visa cards, and this card is this plus 4 basis points, and this is this plus 2.5 basis points. I mean, it's 4 pages of fees to come up to like, $150, and I'm not clear how to read it. But it's different based on the card, who it is, whether it's Citibank or whoever.
I will say, I understand with the mayor, and I did try to, there's no way to quantify
Yeah,
that, but
I
I will
get that.
tell you anecdotally that our front counter is significantly less busy than it was 5 years ago. Now, would I say all those people are gonna come back with a fee? No, but there is an argument for the fact that the cost of doing business has helped us. We haven't necessarily had to downsize the amount of people, because what we get them to do is we just get more help to do other things. But I do want to acknowledge that, I mean, we couldn't quantify that, sir, but you absolutely, hands down, a noticeable difference at the front counter. There were days, in 2013, if we had video of that, with the 9 could be out the door all day long.
Right.
So that has been.
And I think some of that, has to do with the methods of payment, because previous places where I've been that were cash only, tax day was horrible. I mean, we were there till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night counting all the cash, because we didn't take credit cards, we only had checks and cash, and people would come and line up through the door to do it.
I do want to acknowledge too, as it relates to taxes, just for those that are watching as well. For those that do pay their taxes, we're one of the very few communities in Oakland County that have a 8-month pay option. So if they can't afford the one time, they can afford to pay it over eight months as well. So that's also helpful for them.
This cost recovery of about 25,000, that's that's just really a big estimate. How do we get to that number? Because all taxes are different, and it's 2% based on the amount of the taxes, or is it just?
Yeah, she took the
Okay.
amount that was paid through credit card last year and put a 2% markup
Yep,
on what that
exactly.
recovery would have been.
And then for the $2.50, I just took the number of transactions from last year and multiplied it by $2.50. Easy math.
Says you.
Yeah. Why I keep her around.
Right.
Again, no wrong answer, just about cost recovery.
So $250 fee for all other transactions, so I guess I just got a little confused. You send in a payment and $250 is automatically gonna be added to that fee, or?
No,
Paid by credit card.
If
So
you
if
pay
you're
by
paying
credit
online or
card.
here for your water bills, your permits, anything that you're paying a credit card minus taxes would have a $2.50 convenience charge to it. However, with this recommendation, then any taxes that you do online or at the counter would be 2%.
Okay, I see.
That's the recommendation on the table.
We haven't gone any further, have we?
Through the chair, I would recommend supporting staff's recommendation,
Which one?
which is the
They have two.
2% for taxes and fee rate for permits. I lost the page now. I believe that's the recommendation, correct?
$2% for taxes. And
first
And the 250 convenience fee for water bills and permits. All other transactions.
Answer to your question about 1%?
It was just an option. It wasn't a
option?
question really,
Okay.
or opinion, but is that a motion, Greg?
Well, I'm not sure how, are we doing individual motions for each of these fees, or?
just for credit cards, we have discussion. We
Okay.
can, at the end, we can also come back and revisit that. But yeah, that's the only one that I have, that I don't have in the fee schedule because I need more
Not
more
in the fee
clarity on
schedule,
it.
so
So
we
this
Okay.
is the only one I need a
So-
motion on. The other ones will be discussion. We might change some things
Yeah,
through
yeah.
motion, but,
Okay, so I guess I'll read this as a motion.
yeah, sorry, I guess I should.
I move to support staff's recommendation that credit card fees for taxes are 2%, credit card, and convenience fees of $250 for all other transactions.
Support?
Moved by Polika and supported by Martin. Now, discussion on that motion.
I just want to, through the chair,
Yes.
I would just like to say, I think the staff was very thoughtful in these recommendations. And I know the last 5 years, we've talked about credit card fees, and they keep increasing. So it's not a cost that is decreasing. And so I feel, as Councilman Polika has said, that the private use of credit cards, buying purchases online for other things is sort of standard. And I think this is the right thing to do at this time. For the last 5 years, I'm thankful that council was able to make the decision to subsidize, particularly during the downturn, was when we chose to do that. So we wouldn't impact our residents during some difficult hardships for a lot of people. But I think this is the right time to introduce this, to help offset the increasing costs of credit card fees. They're a pickle, man, and they're not going away.
And I would just add, I agree with that. I agree that it's time to implement some sort of a fee. So then the question to me is, does the fee cover the entire 100% of the expenses? Or is there a portion of that that we're incurring as a benefit and wouldn't need to be passed on? And that's just frankly the part I struggle with. And like I said, I don't know how to quantify that, but
Yeah, I paid $350 to take out cash from my ATM for the bank through my credit union,
indeed.
right? Just to get cash. So this is lower than a bank fee.
Truly. Other comments or questions? All right, moved by Polika, supported by Martin. If there's no other questions, Martin, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
No.
Okay. So, thank you. We will note those changes and put them on the fee schedule. All right, so now the rest of what we're gonna talk about is community development, some of the changes there, and recreation. Again, here are our recommendations and kind of explanation of some of the changes. Staff is here to offer any more because CED is very complicated. So we can make changes at the table, and again, we'll just make sure that there's changes to the fee schedule that reflect this conversation, that the minutes will be taken and reflect that, if you guys are comfortable. So, I did overviews on the community development, because again, they probably had the most line items that were pretty significant. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the changes that were made here. So again, I had talked a little bit about that for the first time ever, probably in 10 years, CED took a major comprehensive look at all of their fees. A lot of it stemmed from the fact too that it started to get more complicated in the mere fact that for the first time ever, the city has had a significant amount of new development, so things that maybe have laid dormant for a long time that we hadn't needed to address, now had started coming to the forefront. And a lot of what we did here is there were some changes made in the fact that, and this is probably something I'm gonna have to have a conversation with here, Dee and Chris, is, we have a code book called ICC, which is an international, what does that stand for? Construction Code. Thank you, International Construction Code, correct? All right. What happens is that an International Construction Code also provides insight and industry standards as it relates to price points. So whenever we didn't know an answer to maybe an unusual request through the building department, we would follow the ICC code. And so when Scott Worthington, who's our new building official, just in the last few months, started taking a look at a review, he found there was a lot of things that needed to be clarified. So you'll notice in this fee schedule, as we go through it, there'll be and I probably should have put that in here, but under fiscal 2018, it looks like there may not have been a fee, when in fact, we were just following the ICC code, and Scott wants to bring more clarity to that, so we'll walk through that in just a second. The first thing, it's not necessarily notable, but it's important to know that the permit admin fee is increasing from 25 to 30. One of the significant reasons for that $5 increase is the digital scanning. We're trying to get everything as much digital as much as possible, and these are the very large these plans come in pretty large, and it costs about $1 per page. And so we're looking at, and I had put in a memo in your council packet as well about us staff trying to look and see about getting a good scanner in that we can use not only in CD, but DPW would like that for plans as well. And so that cost, that would reflect the yearly cost to that printer as well as the maintenance cost for that, so.
If I may, through the chair, is this avoidable if we require an electronic submission versus a paper? I mean, why not shift the cost back to the developer?
We could. I think so. Is that, do you know if that's, or do all of them, the smaller ones may not have the ability to go electric?
Just scan a document.
Say the designers, the architects, but I don't know if the homeowner plans would be able to do that very easily.
And Scott, I'm going to have you kind of step over there because for the next few minutes. it's
I
gonna
mean,
be
is an
all
option
you.
to be to waive then if they submit it electronically? We'll
We can
waive
do
the
that.
fee if you submit it electronically?
Yep, we can do that.
I'd like to, it seems like the behavior we want to encourage.
Yeah,
Okay, we can acknowledge that in the fee schedule.
and with the scanner, we'd be able to scan that in and make it a PDF
Yeah.
for the customer at the counter.
Okay, so we can make that adjustment.
Okay.
Building plan review, that is the one I think that, hang on, I got ahead of myself on my own fee schedule here. So the building plan review, again, you will note a few new prices in fiscal year 2019. Again, this is where some of those extra costs came about, where they were not necessarily new fees, but they were confusing to not only the person who wanted the fee, but confusing to staff. And we were finding, again, that we were using the ICC code and we needed more clarity. So I was wondering, Dan, too, if there might not be something that Chris, that we couldn't put in our fee schedule, that under building, that any requests not found on here will be through the ICC code? Because there seems to be every once in a while, like, with all of the new development, we have these like weird nuances that come in, we're not really sure where the.
Yeah, we can take a look at that,
Okay.
and
Have you looked at it?
whether
review
it's
it?
done by resolution or an ordinance amendment, I can let you know.
Okay.
And so, I'm sorry, just on that, April, because a number of those building plan reviews had no fees before, and generally because.
They did, so that
Oh,
under
they
where it says
did.
building plan review, I wish, I should have had name, it'd probably be on third page in.
Yes.
Building plan review, you'll see that they're in purple, the 50/50, and it says 15.015% of the value.
Yeah.
Those were actually the ones that were in the ICC code, so we've been using those, but there was no clarity, and
Okay,
Scott.
so those aren't
yeah,
increases or new
no,
fees, those are
no.
just.
So that was where the confusion
Gotcha.
was, and again, now with so many more new builds coming, it became more apparent and more
Yeah.
complicated, and that's when Scott's like, if we're gonna be doing the fee schedule, I want clarity brought to this as much as possible.
Right. Okay.
Again, this is confusing as it sounds. Here we go. Fence permit, so this is interesting. So we tried to do the community a solid by not requiring fence permits, and we actually made our lives worse for our residents by not having a fence permit. Because what was happening is people were not putting in fence permits on the right lot line, they were not up to code, they were not the right height. And so by putting the fence permit back in, that allows our team to help them make sure that it meets the right specs, that it's gonna pass, and that it's in their appropriate land space. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and ownership as well.
And ownership.
Yeah.
And then zoning compliance is another catch-all that we put in there that is also, we're trying to be more helpful as it relates to ensuring that people have, that's where your shed goes, your pergolas, potentially new driveways, anything that has anything to do with zoning, that's that $50 fee. So you'll see on there somewhere, I think it says shed, it shouldn't say no charge, it should say it's now under zoning compliance. So that was just a shift, and again, that was, now that I'm looking through and going through some of the ways that we worded fiscal 2018, I should be more clear.
So in today's world, we do charge $50 for a shed? So this is or is this a new fee?
Yep, no, it's the same. We were charging 50, we're still charging 50, but it's under zoning compliance. And again, this is to make sure, the big one for the shed is to ensure that sheds have the right, what do you call it, rodent retardant?
Yeah.
Okay, that'll work too. So we want to make sure that they're following the basics of code as it relates to standards. Now, it depends on how big your shed is, you would need a building permit, but the average shed may not need that, but we do require rat walls.
Yeah, once you go over 200 square feet, the building permit would kick in, and the zoning compliance is out of the picture.
And again, making sure it's on your lot line in your yard and not crossing over boundaries or on a utility line or things of that nature. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
You can stop me at any time if I missed anything. I know you guys circled a bunch of things on there, right? Can you hit the arrow button? Apparently this battery is dying or something. Okay, this is the zoning, planning, and we're moving away from building now to more planning and zoning. These are where your biggest jumps came from. And what we, under zoning appeals and rezoning, they have both increased. This review we found is that publishing alone wasn't even being covered. So the average cost for a newspaper is $150. Right now, we're required to do that. The other thing is that doesn't even include the mailings that we do. So when you do the 300 or 500 foot mailing, that is, we're looking at 50 cents mailing. And then also, I'm not sure if it's PUD or zoning where we've also done, where we're now notifying, where it's non-standard compliant, like, when there were certain things that hit a trigger that don't require noticing, that we now require for, what do we call that? What did you call it?
The enhanced notice.
Enhanced notice
Right.
policy. So we're noticing a lot more.
Yeah.
Can I ask the city, though, I mean, I'd like to consideration for nonprofits. For example, I recently went through in another municipality, was the amount of, they wanted to add a hoop house to grow fresh vegetables for the largest food pantry in Oakland County. The cost to get the variance to do that is outrageous and way more than a normal nonprofit that's run 100% on volunteers would be able to handle.
Okay.
So there needs to be some kind of way to exempt or appeal the costs of these things for a nonprofit to say, if it is for a greater public good, to be able to step away from this situation.
So it's funny that you should say that. So hold that thought for just a second too, because under recreation, those are one of the things that we need to look at further about nonprofit and what is identified and is considered a nonprofit. So I hear you. And then let's make sure when we circle back on the recreation that we figure out we're not there yet, but we need to figure that out. So we could do something in the meantime for that if something comes up or whatnot, but actually having a conversation about fees for nonprofits is a bigger conversation that we want to have as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
The PUD process is one I don't think that anybody who's been here, Justin, Jordan, or I have actually dealt with since this last year, to be honest with you, because there just isn't site location, and now we're dealing with like 2, 3, and 4 of them. The PUD process is pretty intense. That's our biggest intensity. Right now, you can see a huge jump from $350 to $2,000. Well, that is the most staff-intensive time. In fact, every department reviews a PUD, planning, zoning, building, fire, police, everything when it comes to the PUD process. This is also significant publishing costs as it relates to newspapers and mailings. And so we still aren't really even going to cover our costs, which is, we're good with that, just because that's part of our team's job is to navigate planning. But we are asking an increase of $350 to $2,000. And it looks, the other thing that CED did for us, just to make sure that we weren't going off track, is they took every fee that they had and compared that to our neighbors as well. And so in most of these, you'll see in the report that Scott provided for us was that we're lower than most of our communities. And right now, the average PUD in other communities is about $2,800. So we're still in line with that as well.
Well, and through the chair, I'm okay with that too. My only comment is this isn't my neighbor asking for a PUD. This is an organization
Yes,
that
absolutely.
bear
They're
this
bigger.
cost, yeah, or they shouldn't be asking for.
That was the Royal Oak issue?
Yeah, that's, that, yeah.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, that's a, so the PUD process is typically in commercial, not residential, unless you're doing a residential development, which is a whole different story. Clicker. Thanks, Scott. Building trades, I didn't, again, go into a lot of detail. This one is another significant change, and there was multiple changes made. In fact, most of the changes were actually decreased under the building trades. Again, what Scott did with his team at Safe Built was really take a look at streamlining the process. So what was happening is you might, instead of being charged for, every single circuit, we've kind of decreased that and pooled them into different groups, if you will. So you will see in the, where it starts going HVAC, low voltage motors, plan review, all of that stuff, you're starting to see a decrease in some of those fees as it relates to streamlining that process of when you start looking at plumbing connections and circuits and electricity and all of that kind of stuff. We were getting a little heavy in charging for every single little thing, so we kind of lowered that cost, if you will, to allow for it easier to understand and a little cheaper for the trades. And that does affect a lot of our residents, actually. So again, as it relates to CD, I didn't go over every little thing, but we moved some things around and increased in some areas, decreased in others, but really what this was a cleanup and clarity as it relates to what was going on in the trades. It gets very complicated and very layered in the building department. We're trying to unlayer that as much as possible.
So why don't we do, while we're on that section, if there's any questions about any of the
There's something we
CED
didn't
stuff, let's just do that now before we get to recreation. Is the reason for, a couple of them that I had highlighted, like, where was it? The special meeting, no, was that the rezoning hearing, the street alley vacation, is that the one that was, yeah, that was like tripled? Is that also, again, that same notion of notification and?
Yes.
Okay. Then that makes sense to me, and we did require that, so we'd like them to pay for it. Okay. Oh, liquor license review fee, doubled. Oh, that's actually not in CED, I'm sorry, that was
okay.
before, but
It's under clerk.
that would be under, that was before, that was under city clerk, actually. We kind of went through I had a couple on city clerk.
That's fine, yeah, I didn't, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That one decreased the liquor review fee.
No. Oh, I'm sorry, you're cutting it in half. I thought you were doubling it. I'm dyslexic tonight. Okay. That's going from 500 to 250, so I'll be okay with that. And so that answers my other question, which I also thought was an increase, and it's actually a decrease, so never mind. Anyone else with anything in CED? Thank you. All right. Want to do recreation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there it goes, it's moving. Yay. Okay, so this one was a little different in the fact that up and down it went. So what recreation did is, I'm gonna focus on two specific areas. You have your building rental and your, Scott, you are free and clear, buddy. Building rental and park rental. So you can notice that in their building rental side, that there are some rooms that went up and some went down, depending on the conditions of the room. And again, Lisa took control of that, those particular instances, and made sure too that where we were as it relates to other communities, looks like we're about middle impact depending on the room. So all of those were up and down $5. They weren't too crazy, but I'd be happy to take any questions as it relates to building. We did add, more and more people are asking for some technology support as it relates to projector and screens, so we felt we wanted to be able to, it's not necessarily charging for the fee of using that, but to help them set it up and navigate all of that kind of stuff. Is there any questions on the building rental side before we move to parks?
Just, I think it ties to the nonprofit discussion, so.
Yes,
hold.
yep. And then on the park side, I want to be clear, so one of the things that people get a little confused about, you can use a pavilion or any part of the park anytime you want to. But when you want to party or you want to have that space for just yourself, that's when you rent them. So I don't want anybody thinking they can't go hang out under one of the brand-new pavilions that we're getting and think they have to be paid for that. But if they want to bring in and have grandma's 100th birthday party and you want exclusive rights to that, that's when you would want to rent that. So we are looking at putting Wanda and Harding on there, since they will have new park pavilions this next year. And then we're also looking at lowering rental rates during the weekday, so that people, if they want a cheaper rate to have those parties, they can have those in the parks during the week. One of the things we want to add under the dog park too is a non-resident rate, to hopefully, if we increase that, we can even decrease those costs even further as it relates for our residents. And then the other thing that we're adding is concession stand at Martin Road. It's very common for communities to have other people come in and do the concession, and they can provide the concessions to the people who are using it, but then they can make the money for fundraisers, and you see a lot of band boosters and sport boosters using that. So we didn't have a fee for that. And so right now we have a building at Martin Road, if I'm not mistaken, correct, Marina, that allows for that right now. And as we obviously build those parks up, there'll be more of those opportunities.
You're not adding a fee to those, you're just making them available to more.
Never was a fee or
Right,
ability
but
to do
you're not
it.
adding one.
There was not a fee prior. There wasn't.
No, I know, but going forward.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
that's my question.
So there are a few things, though, that are left undone right now as it relates to fees for recreation that we're going to be talking about. Nonprofit rates and what constitutes a nonprofit. We're getting more and more neighborhood groups that are forming that want to meet as well, but we're trying to identify that everybody is a neighborhood group right now. I know that there's been a lot of questions as it relates to the use of the dog park, and right now they're getting all that data, making sure that, that's being used to its fullest capability. And then, of course, obviously, what that means when non-residents come, and if that can offset some of the costs for our residents. But then the credit card fees are really complicated there, because we use a company called ActiveNet that helps navigate not only the credit card or the fee payment, but it allows them to do team rosters and allow people to check when their meets are, or like whatever soccer field they are on for soccer. So it's one of those things you kind of can't do one without the other. And so their fee system is pretty expensive and really complicated, so our team needs to sit down and spend some more time on how we can navigate those fees. And they don't give us the flexibility that Point and Pay does, meaning Point and Pay is basically tell us what you want, we'll make it happen. Isn't that correct, Cheryl, for the most part? And ActiveNet is more like you have to either make them pay it all or not. So we really have to take a look at what that means. So for right now, I would say let's not have credit card fees be part of our recreation programming for now until we get that figured out. So that is where we are as it relates to some of the significant changes. I think that's it. That's what I did. Like I said, I just focused on some of the big ticket items, and I didn't, so if there's other ones that I missed that you circled, I'd be happy to go over those.
No, but are you looking for comments now on the recreation stuff? Or no?
Those are things that we need to look at.
Okay, so they're to be
yeah,
discussions. All right,
yeah.
thanks.
So specific fees that anyone has questions on?
Oh, yes, I think there is. How about
right,
the,
Councilwoman?
okay, I'm trying to remember where it was, but I'll just say, so, the pool fee.
The who fee? I'm sorry, the what one?
Pool.
Pool?
$150.
Where's this at?
That's for a permit to build.
But yeah, permit to build.
build.
Yeah,
Okay, never mind.
okay.
We're good. Okay.
Now look at Damart was really excited we were getting a pool.
You know,
A lot of
we've got
community
the
members would be
secret hidden
excited.
pool in the city.
Did the memorial
that's not
benches
expensive
just
at
go
all.
up that much, 750 to 950?
Again, the benches themselves are quite expensive, so it's, now one could argue though, if you want people to donate them, it's still cheaper than us buying the whole thing and putting it in, but that covers some of our
No, I
staff
want
time
us
in
to
the
cover a
bench.
cost,
Yeah.
I'm just asking if the cost has gone up
Yeah,
that much.
yeah. I still don't think it's quite covering the, because we do that really strong metal benches that are really good quality.
Like cast iron, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, it's a legacy purchase, you want it to be, you know.
Yep.
I know, the special event rental processing fee, a new $25. Is that in here, or is that something you just put out there for future discussion? Special events rental processing fee, we would like to start implementing a special events rental processing fee of $25 per application
Oh, and the recreation.
for recreation. Is that something that's now in the fee schedule that, or is this something in the future that you want us to?
No, that one is in there right now.
That's in there.
Because
So
when it.
talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Lorena, would you mind commenting on that? There's a trigger that happens when it no longer becomes just a recreation, and then it becomes a special event as well, but not a full special, I'm gonna let her.
Yeah, just
handle it.
curious, I just,
Yeah.
for my education.
So anytime we rent out a park or pavilion and it's over 100 people in attendance, then they have to go through a special event process, which includes our special events director. And then it's additional paperwork and processes that we go through.
Gotcha. All right, now I get you. All right, that makes sense. Okay, I feel like there was one I could be.
I'm sorry, through the chair. Is that a Ferndale designated number, or is that some type of number that is established by the state, 100 people?
That's ours.
It's ours, okay.
Local ordinance.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't see it.
Go ahead.
I didn't see it here, but I just, so the garage sale permit, that's still zero? But
Yeah,
just
we stopped charging for that years ago.
I know, I just want to make sure it's still.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I applaud us taking away the charge for voter information electronically. That's cool. I appreciate that. And then I guess I will just throw out, this is kind of an annual comment for me, but get ready. So I know there's according to the memo at least, some discussion about charging, allowing non-residents to use our dog park and perhaps at a higher fee. So I continue to be frustrated at the lack of usage of the dog park, and so I appreciate us looking into allowing non-residents to do it. I'm not sure charging them more will be helpful or not, so I guess we would see. I'm willing to lower the current fee to get people to use it, but I've never seen any statistics about how much annually it costs to operate, so I don't know how much we actually need to charge people to use the park. I know that the requirement to go through the dog training classes is prohibitive for some people, and I don't know if that's something that needs to be looked at or not, but I'll just do my annual frustration in the lack of use of the dog park, and we need to do something about it.
I concur. Through the chair, I think we have to have a significant look at what is the barrier, because it was very popular at first. If it is the class, we should know that and be able to address that and look at it or whatever it is. But I'm 100% with you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
Through the chair. Back when I was on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and we created the dog park, there was an intention that it would have a number of amenities within it, activities for the dogs. It wasn't just supposed to be this empty lot that dogs could run around in. There were supposed to be, some things for the dogs to do in both parks. I don't know where that plan is. I'm sure that probably with the continued redevelopment of our parks, and particularly Wilson Park, there's probably some plan at some point to do something more with the dog park. But I think a lot of that usage has gone down because nothing has been happening with the dog park. I think once you show a renewed, revitalization of that space with maybe some things for the dogs to do, run through, jump over, that kind of stuff, you may see an increase.
I don't disagree, and I'm open to having services and programs there for dogs, but as Councilman Martin said, when it was initially free, it was packed. And now it's at a level that apparently is too high for people to feel like it's a value for them. And so I feel like we've missed the mark on what the fee is. And I want us to recover the costs there, but I don't know what they are. So I don't disagree that that could help stimulate activity, but anecdotally, it just feels like either the fee or the class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I hear you.
Is it there a cost for the class? There isn't.
There's not a cost to
No.
the class.
Yes, okay.
It's a commitment.
Yeah, yeah.
So I tell you what, we'll bring a report back to you within 90 days. I got it. We'll bring a report back in 90 days.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But thank you. Otherwise, I really appreciate the extra dive that all the department heads took to help explain the fee schedule. It's really helpful for us, and so I appreciate the extra time, and I am comfortable supporting the rest of this as presented and as amended.
Some went down, some went up.
That's
Most of
right.
it went up, so, yeah.
But I'd also, if I could through the chair, just like to encourage that nonprofit neighborhood group discussion to happen sooner than later
No.
because it's coming up a lot.
It is, they're collecting data right now of who's already using it, that's considered a nonprofit, and kind of and then also what neighborhood groups are using it, and then we're also taking a look at what that looks like. So we need some kind of guideline, otherwise everybody is a nonprofit.
I agree, but if we could have council representation on that discussion, because we've inadvertently or miscommunicated, turned groups away that we shouldn't.
Correct, no, yeah, we're collecting the data and then we'll come back.
I'm just saying the data won't show those that we've turned away.
If I may, for example, the Democratic Club, they used to use it a lot, and then they stopped using it because the fee was just too much for them, and they were actually able to get a space much cheaper.
Actually, I agree with that one. We should charge the political clubs. I mean, but that's the
See, that's
kind of
my
discussion.
question.
But that's the
Yeah.
discussion we need to have. They want to be a
Yes.
501c3,
Yes.
can they be a 501c4?
Yes.
So that's a discussion we should have. But I agree, it's an important discussion. I know in other communities.
We're there, trust us,
it's been
and
a
especially as
huge
our
issue.
space becomes more,
In demand?
in demand with the small space, that's becoming an
Maybe a
issue
broader
too.
discussion of what's our prioritization of what we're using our
Yep,
space for.
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you guys will all be brought back into that. Right now, they're collecting all the data. So I would say before the end of the year as well, in the next couple months, we'll be having that conversation. Maybe we'll do them all at once.
Awesome. All right,
Thank
so a
you.
motion would be in order.
I think that is on your agenda.
And let's see. Is it on there?
I don't know if a formal, yeah.
Says,
Should
We
have.
needed to
I
vote on it.
moved that city council, after notice and public hearing, resolved to approve the
There it is.
updates to the fee schedule for fiscal year 2019.
And I was going to say, does it need to say as amended? But we didn't change anything else, right?
Not
We did the
direct- you-
credit
you
cards,
did the
but we
credit card
did-
separately. You're
Everything
fine.
else was
Yep.
as is. Okay. So moved by Polika,
Support.
supported by Piana. Final questions, comments, concerns?
So that was the credit card?
No.
And the fees?
This is
That we
separate,
just-
The credit card, we already did.
We did the
Credit card and
Okay,
fees. So
okay.
this,
We're
the
just
rest is the
fees.
fee
Okay.
schedule.
the rest of it.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Final comments or questions? All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Hey, Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Excellent, so that concludes the regular agenda this evening. The next item of business is call to council. So Chief Palazzolo.
He's already dressing better than the last chief.
Remember, this is televised.
I say he's incognito.
Good evening, sir.
I hope I put enough real estate between the Chiefs thing and chickens.
I think you had, well, you had, I don't know.
Been
You brought it up.
associated. So I wanted to give you an update from last council meeting. Councilman Martin, you asked about the Narcan uses.
Oh, yeah.
Since inception, April of 2016, we've administered 80 doses, which resulted in 43 saves. You asked about if there's any repeat customers. When we
Wait, I'm sorry, 80 doses, 43 saves, so that
Correct.
means unfortunately,
sometimes you use 2 or 3 doses per person.
oh, per person. okay.
Typically, we use more than one. 'Cause
And that was since when?
April of 2016. When we save the data, it's very minimal. We put the address, the date, whether we left some information to get service and stuff like that. So I can't tell you if there's actual repeat customers. I can tell you that there's repeat addresses, but some of them are like 1-800 or 100 West 8 Mile and some of those. So there are some repeat customers, I believe, but the names I'm not sure. What is even more astounding, and I would never have guessed this, is since we started Hope Not Handcuffed, we've had 73 people walk through the door. Which if you'd asked me, I would have said there was 20 or so. Sergeant Brown did all the legwork on it, and it found out that there was actually 73.
When did we start that?
It's been about a year,
Okay.
year and change.
That's phenomenal.
So
That's great.
those numbers are staggering.
And we're no longer the only one in Oakland doing that, right? I know many
It's
communities in
starting to
Macomb County.
it's starting to migrate, but
Are we still the only
the
one? though, in
feedback we're
Oakland, or-
getting, nope, but the feedback we're getting is when they come here, they get treated with respect. So people kind of come here and don't go to other places where they're
Gotcha.
not treated as well. So
Gotcha.
that's good. And it's not a big burden or heavy lift on our desk folks.
Great.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
are we identifying maybe what community they're coming from? I don't think that they're all coming from Ferndale.
No, they're not. But when we ask them, where do you live, they say that they have a Ferndale nexus, and we don't really press them on it. So. Sergeant Brown also just started up, it'll actually go on September 17th, is something we call Handle with Care. It was a collaboration with the schools. We know that if kids are involved in some type of domestic, or they witness some type of domestic, their behavior at school is not necessarily the best. And a lot of times the schools don't know that something's going on in the home. So starting this September 17th, when we respond to something and there's some type of domestic abuse or some traumatic situation, that individual's, just their name will be emailed to the superintendent of the school district, and then it just says handle with care, and then they'll push it out from there. But it allows their social workers or stuff to know that something happened, and it may be why there's some outbursts and things like that. Last thing I have is on Saturday, if any of you are interested, I'll be rucking 20 kilometers from Pontiac to the Ferndale Memorial at 9 Mile in Livernois to raise veterans awareness on suicide. So get your walking shoes on and rucksack and feel free to meet me. No? Nobody? Y'all
but
good? Y'all got something to do?
Are you collecting money?
I gotta write you a check.
No? Oh, okay.
With a 2.5% fee on my,
Just
Whatever
bring my
it takes.
inhaler.
Whatever it takes.
Good for you, that's awesome, yeah.
awesome.
When are you doing that?
Saturday.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
very cool,
that's it.
I had more time to train.
Sure.
excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Chief. Lorraine, anything else from Recreation Department this evening?
Just a few reminders. This Thursday at 6:30 PM at the Kulik Center, we're hosting a community planning meeting for Wilson Park. So anybody interested in the development of the park, feel free to join us. And a similar meeting will be held next Thursday, the following Thursday, for Geary Park at Kulik as well at 6:30. In addition, that's pretty much it. I just want to say that our basketball registration for youth has opened, so feel free to register. Thank you.
Dan, you're signing up, right?
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
as the basketball.
Chief Sullivan, anything else from the fire department this evening?
Nothing this evening,
All right. Dan, anything from HR? All right. The other Dan, how about DPW? Got a lot of Dans.
There's only 4 Dans.
Couple updates. DPW is prepping for our annual leaf collection. We don't have the schedule yet. The director's working on that. We also received our early delivery of salt. Our barn is full. We're ready to go.
Excellent.
Hopefully, we have a mild winter.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Pretty depressing conversation here, Dan.
I know, really.
Leaves
Just
and
turned
snow.
September, but I'm glad you're prepared. Appreciate it.
You never know, it could snow tomorrow, it's Michigan.
Before long, next week, we'll have to hear about how you can't park on leaves in the street and,
Yeah, I know.
you know,
Won't be
traditions.
long. All
I
right.
was up north a couple weeks ago, they're already falling, so.
I will note, though, that Carlos, I think just this morning, if I'm not mistaken, emailed her schedule. So I know that schedule is going to be coming out in the next 2 weeks,
Yeah.
making sure it's tweaked and ready, but people have plenty of notice. So thanks, Dan.
Jordan, anything from Community and Economic Development?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to do a quick announcement that the second Ferndale Soup event is going to be set for September 19th at 6 p.m. at the Rust Belt Market. The last one we had was actually the highest attended soup event that the soup organization ever had. And they've been doing them in Detroit for several years. What they are is essentially, it's a community-based business pitch. So a little bit friendlier than Shark Tank, but the same premise is you can apply to have your organization, so it could be a nonprofit, it could be an individual, or it could be a business with an idea that they want to scale up in Ferndale that has a community bent to it, but it could be a business proposal. For example, the one that won the first soup was, I think it was called Lawyer to Go. So it was essentially applying a food truck concept to legal services for folks who can't usually afford legal service. So they won last time. No, I don't know if Dan was a silent partner in that one, or, but it's a really great opportunity. It's a optional $5 donation at the door, and essentially what happens is you have all of that money gets collected in a pot. The entire community that attends gets to vote after hearing all 4 presentations. And then what was awesome was last time Level 1 Bank had matched the donation, so we also try to get a sponsor to help match. So that winner walked out with $1,600. And then Soup actually matched Detroit Build Institute that's been partnering with the city over the past year. So if you have an organization or an individual or a business that wants to submit a proposal, if you do so by the end of the week, go to search Ferndale Soup on Facebook and just write a message on that wall, and we'll get you all the detailed instructions. So just search for Ferndale Soup on Facebook, and you just put a message on that wall, and we'll get to you.
And so when they win, like the Lawyers to Go, then they collect that money.
That's correct. And actually, as is tradition with Soup, they'll come back to this one and report out how they've been, what they've been up to, what they did with the money, et cetera.
Excellent.
Thanks.
So if I may through the chair, the
Yeah.
original concept of Soup, though, was around nonprofit and charity work. Is there any talk about bringing that back? Not that this isn't great, but there was a component to it that revolved around nonprofits the first time.
We've been talking about that with Soup and with Build in terms of what that'll look like long-term. Our goal is to work with the Build Institute, try to find a way to do at least one of these a year, and that's been part of the conversation as well. So like the way we've approached it is just kind of having the wide berth to open it up since it's something new to Ferndale. We've been trying to, just up the usage, but as we kind of look to deepen it and see how it'll live in Ferndale long-term, that's something that's been part of the convo.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Parking, any parking updates for us to see? Oh, we got 2 parking guys, okay. Either one of you, or both.
I'll just get a couple updates, if I may. At the next council meeting, September 24th, we're going to be having a public hearing regarding the residential parking zone, the current residential parking zone located on West Troy Street between Allen and Woodward Avenue. There's a section there that borders the DOT project. Those residents did submit a petition, and for various reasons, specifically its location directly in the proximity to the DOT, we would recommend endorsing their petition to transition from a RPZ to an RPOP, which is resident permit-only parking. We did submit a public hearing to the residents on that street, or a public notice about the public hearing to the residents on that street for September 24th council meeting.
Do we have to vote to have a public hearing, though, today?
No.
No,
It does not have, the council does not have to schedule that public hearing, but notice as it relates to that public hearing has gone out.
It's been communicated, correct.
I'm just curious now, what's the difference between public notices that need to,
By by ordinance, certain, and statute, some
Okay.
have, and
And this-
charter,
this
some
just
have
isn't one.
probably
All right.
a requirement.
That's why we pay you, Dan, okay.
A petition triggered this, right?
That's
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Through the
Yeah, and that's
chair.
part of the ordinance.
Okay.
You said West Troy, you mean West Saratoga?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you,
Yeah,
correct.
West Troy wouldn't really require it. Well, it could, I suppose.
Apartment building.
Also, on the next agenda, we had also, on the dot, submitted recently an RFP for construction management services to support us during pre-construction. We expect to select that respondent and present that to council on the 24th agenda as well.
I'm sorry,
And
through the chair, you're speaking very quickly. What is this for?
this is for construction management services to support us during the pre-construction phase of the
All
dot.
right,
to
thank
help
you.
us.
Sorry.
Yep. And then also, like the chief, on Saturday, I will be supporting an agency too. I'll be supporting Gilda's Club of Detroit by supporting and participating in their 5K run walk to support those who are struggling against cancer or who have unfortunately recently lost a bout with it. So
Great.
And that one you are collecting money for?
I am collecting money, and if you're
Alright.
interested, I would be happy to send you a donation link to.
That would be great.
To support Team Capella, or if you'd like to join me in walking or running down there, let me know.
The former.
Let's be clear.
Crystal clear, crystal clear.
Thanks. Did you have other, parking guy number 2? Kara, anything from communications or and community engagement this evening? Someone to introduce.
I like to think this is a little more exciting than a chicken, we'll see. So I want to take this opportunity to officially introduce Lindsay Gunsorek, our new communications specialist. She is coming to us from Detroit Country Day, is that right? Where she was also a communications specialist doing a lot of the same things that she's already doing here, which is 10 different requests from 10 different departments on any given day. Her role really is going to be department level communication management so that I can focus on city level communication management. But we're going to be working very closely as a team and actually sitting right next door to each other in the same office. So.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this position and looking forward to working with this community.
Us too, thank you.
Welcome.
Yay, welcome aboard. Cheryl, anything from finance this evening? All right. Never. Marty, anything from the city clerk's office this evening?
Sure, nothing says fall like elections and leaf pickup. So just want to announce that AV applications are available for the November general election. Ballots have just been finalized by the state. The deadline to do that was September 7th, so they are being finalized. We've had some calls about why aren't the ballots available yet, but there is a process that goes through. So we're expecting to have them available and out by the end of September. Also wanted to announce that the close of registration for the November election is October 9th. And that my team will be conducting a voter registration drive at the DIY festival. So if people are out and about and want to come and register to vote or sign up to be a precinct inspector, come and see us at the police booth.
Through the chair, so while they're printing ballots, are they printing a bunch extra for us here on November?
They are, the state law requires 100% of registered voters to have ballots for.
Okay.
I am ordering extra ballot stock, and I am going to be ready in case we do not have sufficient amounts at 100%.
Sure.
But that requirement is not for the primaries.
No,
so
I hear you,
that-
yeah, interesting.
Actually, when I was up at the Oakland County Board of Canvassers not too long ago, they were making a request for August primaries to have 100% of ballots, and I do believe that will be forthcoming.
Great, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. In fact, that goes to the Board of Commissioners, I
Correct.
think, right?
Yes.
Would it be helpful for us to do sort of a resolution in support or something? Just keep that in the back of your mind, if
Yeah,
that's helpful.
I'll check on the status.
That might-
Thank you.
Okay. City manager, anything else from?
No, just a friendly reminder again for those that are interested in, if you haven't met the new chief of police yet, next Tuesday here at City Hall from 6 to 7, we are doing a meet and greet and a small ceremony to recognize his new position. Love to have you.
Excellent. Dan?
Just one item, Mayor. There was a request by the library to consider a minor purchase agreement amendment with respect to the sale of the library. That will be likely coming for council's consideration at its next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Martin.
I have nothing this evening.
All
Thank you.
right. Councilwoman Neeks May.
Nothing for me this evening.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Third, nothing, Your Honor.
Councilwoman Piana.
I'm not a nothing burger. Just wanted to let people know that Councilwoman Raylon Leaks May and myself are going to the Michigan Municipal League Conference next week and look forward to learning. It's a joint conference with the Michigan Association of Planning. So over 1,000 people, appointed officials as well as elected officials will be there to do absolute learning about cities and placemaking. So that's it.
All right. And I just want to remind my council that a week from Thursday morning is the next Mayor's Business Council get-together, bright and early at 7:30 in the morning, but it should be a very lively discussion about policies and legislation at both the federal and state level that could affect our business community and our community. Congressman Levin will be there. State Rep. Wittenberg is there as well. It'll be moderated, and it should be a very lively and interesting discussion, and I hope that you can all make it if possible.
Where's it at?
Incubizo at 1938 Burdette Street. And you should have gotten an invitation from Michael Leary. If not, we'll make sure that you all get one. Yikes. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.